today I'm going to be attempting to make a pop art comic book style cake. I'm trying to make it as sort of easily as possible. So I've actually bought a shop cake. This one, I think it was only £4 something, so I probably couldn't make it much cheaper. Let's get started. One of the things I've learned is really important is keeping the cake as cool as possible. So this has been in the fridge. In the future steps I'm going to put it in the freezer, but because I need to cut this, I thought that I'd just keep it in the fridge for now. So I'm going to go ahead and unbox this cake. I'm just going to go for it and try and get a sort of cartoony cake slice size. And now that I've got that, I'm going to use this on top of another section to cut out the same shape again. Hopefully I didn't cut beyond the middle. So now I have 3 slices at the same size. I'll probably make a smaller version of this one and then I can have a practice one to do later. And I think that these all stacked up together might be a little bit too tall. I'm not sure if you can see that. It's probably about the size of my head now. So I'm probably going to cut one of these cakes in half because it does have a centre bit. And then it's quite important to get it level, and at the moment it's not quite level. So I'm going to try and cut this top bit to make it flush. Now what I need to do is crumb coat it, but I'm actually going to cut this section into a similar shape so that I have 2 and I can use one as practice. So now I've got my main cake over here in the background. I've got my backup cake, which is a lot less level. This one I'm pretty happy with. I'm going to try and move it into the centre of the board, and hopefully not just gonna work. I've trimmed down the sides to try and make them as flat as I can. And now it's time for the crumb coat. And again, because I'm trying to keep everything as simple as possible, I've got some pre-made buttercream and I'm just going to put a layer on. I've not seen many people do this design of cake with chocolate cake. I assume it's because the chocolate can show through the buttercream, but I want a chocolate cake, so let's see what it turns out like. Also, most people for this will use fondant and not buttercream. Again, I think it will just give a flatter design, but I'm not a big fondant fan, so I'm gonna scoop out some of this buttercream with a palette knife and just start coating the entire cake in it. As you can see, it's catching all the crumbs and it will help give a smoother finish when I put the next layer on. So now that I've got it all covered in buttercream, a little bit slapdash, but I'm gonna try and smooth it out just to make my future life easier and get it as flat as possible. I'm not too bothered about how this looks because we are going to put at least 1 layer on top of it, but if I could get it as smooth as possible now, it should save me some work in the future. So I'm relatively happy with the crumb coat on this one. I'm now going to pop this in the freezer to try and get it as hard as possible so that for the next bit I can get smoother lines easier. So this has just come out of the freezer after a few hours and this is pretty hard now. And I've got these cake tools that I got with this turntable, and I'm going to attempt to just put another layer of this white icing on it and smooth it down. So I'm hoping that I can get nice flat edges and I'll get rid of all of these sort of crumbs that are showing through at the moment. So it coming out of the freezer definitely helped. It's very firm. And I'm not too bothered about these top sides because they're going to get covered even more in icing. It was more about getting these sides relatively square. And the good thing about this cake design is that you only actually need 1 or 2 good sides because you're only going to view it from one angle, and I'll show you what I mean at the end. So this one's going back in the freezer. Now this is looking a bit too white for a comic book cake, so I've got some yellow and orange food colouring, probably mostly yellow, and I'm just going to mix up some of this icing with some colour in a bowl and then slap that on and try and get it as smooth as possible again. So you can see the difference between the buttercream I've just made and the colour of the cake at the moment. palette knife and then put this on. So now this is yellow cake. I'm going to pop it back in the freezer. It's not perfectly smooth, but as long as we get one good side, it should be okay. So I might work on the sides a little bit more. The back and the front won't really show up too much. So this will go in the freezer, ready for the next layer. So while that one's chilling in the freezer, I'm just going to go ahead and make the other colours that I need to make. I'm going to go with a sort of turquoisey blue, a pink, and then a black for the outlines. So these are the colours that I've ended up with. I really like this blue, this pink. It's okay, but I don't really know how to make it pinker because it is just sort of desaturated red. And this black is very much just grey, but it doesn't seem to matter how much more black I add. I can't get it sort of jet black, so I think I'm going to stick with this and maybe present the cake in some low light. So I'm going to try and do the pink bit of the icing first. I have no idea what I'm doing when it comes to icing, so I can't tell you what tips I'm using or anything, but it's sort of this flat one because it seems to make the most sense. And I've put my piping bag in this jug, and I'm just going to scoop the pink icing into here. And then I'm going to grab this, squeeze all the air out of it, and get the cake out of the freezer ready to ice. So the idea here is to cover the top flat and sort of do some drift bits down the side. I also want to do a sort of ridge in the middle, so I'm just going to mark out where I want these ridges to be. So I want 3. So roughly in the middle, roughly halfway up from that, and roughly halfway down. And I'll put that on the other side as well. And these are going to have some sort of layers that make it look like, I guess it would be jam, or icing is pouring out all the layers between them. So let's give this a go. Annoyingly, my GoPro died just before I managed to get to finish this off and then pipe this line around the middle, but I don't think we missed too much. And I've tried to smooth this down as much as I can. I might go over it with maybe like a warm finger or a heated up palette knife in a bit, just to try and get it as smooth as possible, because I think that will really add to the comic book effect. But now all I need to do is pipe in this blue line with the 2 lines that I've scored here and here. And I'm using a different tip for this, which might not be the best one, but we'll find out together. I think it's okay, it's just a bit too textured for my liking, so I'm just gonna try and flatten it out and try and make it stick to where that score line is, so that the score line doesn't show through. So I'll do the same at the bottom and on the other side. So if you are attempting this, I definitely recommend using the sort of normal round tips and not the fluted ones. This is similar to the one that I used for the pink, but a bit wider, and it gave quite a smooth finish. And then this one is sort of similar to the one that I used for the blue, and it's given a textured finish that I'm now going to have to go over, probably with a wet finger, and just smooth all of these down. So the eagle-eyed might have noticed this red dollop of buttercream. I'm going to attempt to make that into a cherry, and I want to make a sort of swirl up here of cream and then put a cherry on top. So for that cream, I'm just going to use the vanilla buttercream as it is. It's not pure white, but I think it'll be close enough. Okay, as long as we get it roughly cherry shaped, we can fill in the blanks with the black outline. So I think it's going to go back in the freezer for now to firm up a bit before we do the black outlines. So I got the cake out of the freezer and realised that the board was just a mess, so I got the scraper and got as much of the icing off the cake board as I could, just to tidy it up a little bit. I grabbed a piping bag, filled it with the black icing, which isn't off grey, but I think it does look black once it's on the cake. And basically wherever 2 colours meet, I just drew a line so it would look like the outline of a cartoon. So here I'm just lining around where the blue meets the yellow, and I'll go around and do that for all the colours. So this is the part where you have to pick which side is going to be your good side and which side you're going to be viewing the cake from. And I tried to keep looking at it from this one angle and draw sort of little lines wherever an edge looks like it is. So you'll see me go along the top and draw just sort of a dashed line just to make it sure that you could see where the top of the cake is from that perspective. And this is the bit where I realised that the back of the cake shouldn't have had these lines, and it should have just been a flat colour on the back, because then you can draw a second outline to give you the sort of cross of the cake at the back. But I just went with it. So this is the final reveal. It's definitely a little bit rougher than I would have liked, but I think I did really well for my first attempt at this cake. And it was my birthday cake and I was happy with it. So let me know in the comments below how you would do it differently, and if there's any hints or tips. I'm quite happy that I got away with making it in buttercream and didn't have to use fondant, and I think the colours are great. If you want to know how the spare cake turned out, or what I did with the leftovers from making this cake, then stay tuned because I'll be putting a video out real soon, and please think about subscribing.